Welcome to the Turning Stone Show, where we discuss topics of the human experience. We're here to offer conversation, ask questions, and explore. We invite you to join with us on this journey in the discovery of purpose in life. I'm David Marsh, and here with me, as always, is Jesse Ferrell and Justin Maman. Today's discussion is about energy. We recently asked people in a local public market, what is energy? And this is what they had to say.
It's all based within yourself. It's not something that you can easily teach somebody else.
If you think positive thoughts and you try to lead a positive life, then you'll glean that from the universe.
Your motivations. I mean, you're not going to have any energy if you're not excited to do anything.
Energy to me is joy.
Energy to me is happiness, joy.
No idea. I have none. What keeps us going?
I don't know, positivity and being self-aware and optimism.
Energy is, I feel, it comes from the earth and surroundings.
I think it's a force inside yourself and a force you can feel in society.
Everything. Everything.
Universal life force.
It can be feeling, emotion. It can be just the nature around us.
I believe it's from a creative force. And I think the further we are away from our own true sense of creativity, the less energy we have and the less we have to offer ourselves and others. I think it's the force that is everything that we know, everything we can touch that's within us and around us.
Energy can be a unit of measurement, or it can be a thought, an attitude, or a feeling. Gentlemen, how do you feel about energy? Do you feel there's a flow to it? Do you feel there's something tangible to it? Is it esoteric? Is it ethereal? What's your feeling about energy?
Well, when you first asked me what I feel about energy, I'm like, I feel great about energy. I love energy.
That's right.
There's a different question I think that arises for me around energy is like, what is energy? And how do I feel about energy? Everything is energy. And so then how then can I become self-aware of everything is energy, and how does all that energy play together to make up the sofa that I'm sitting on, to make up the cameras and the lights that are filming us, to make up the exchange of now energy that we share together, to everything else like you talked about that can be measured or experienced, or the moods, anything like that. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the first thing that comes up for me when you ask that question.
Mm-hmm. Justin, do you find that thoughts contain energy?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think that, a lot of times we talk about biochemistry. We think that the chemistry creates, like the chemistry creates the feeling first, but, I think in some cases, I haven't looked at the research myself, but I would imagine that thoughts actually create chemical changes in our systems. I think you can really easily tap into it just by observing your own thoughts and then the effects that they have on your mood, on your own energy levels, and I think they're pretty powerful in that way.
Yeah, they're very powerful in that way. When you were talking about that, it reminded me of one of the first times I really started noticing how powerful my thoughts are like that in my body. I was actually walking my dog, and I felt great. And it was an early morning walk. Body felt great. I had no stress or pain in my body. I remember I was texting, and I was also just thinking some really negative thoughts about a relationship I had just ended. And in a matter of moments, I went from feeling great on my walk to thinking these thoughts to immediately noticing in my body where I was feeling pain. Like when I'm stressing out, I notice it up in my left shoulder. Like that's where I immediately notice that first stress that comes in my body when I'm stressing. And I stop, I'm like, holy cow, like I felt great a minute ago. I'm thinking these thoughts and now my shoulder hurts. Yeah. Yep. So let me start thinking some positive thoughts and let's see how quickly that shoulder pain can disappear. And it just like unraveled. It was the disappearance of that. And so that's when I really began to notice how powerful our language is, down to our thoughts, into our language, and then into how it manifests in our bodies, and then also how it manifests in our surroundings. Yeah. It's the whole reason that we're here. Yeah. we've had separately thoughts about creating conversations that really empower men and empower people to live amazing lives. We're engaged in that conversation. We're creating those thoughts, the energy out there. Here suddenly a week later, you call me, you're like, we're going to do a show. We're going to have a show, talk about, the experience of the human experience, and have conversations about it, a show about questions and questioning.
Yeah.
Like, wow, we were literally just thinking those thoughts. We had just had a bottle of wine 4 nights before, and we're like, wow, we need to do a podcast about this. We need to start doing a YouTube show about this. Like, those thoughts are very powerful. And then a few days later, you're completely inspired by a thought that you have and share it now with me. And now this energy brought us together, and here we are.
Yeah. I'd say in some ways, thoughts are the origin point of creation. Like, everything starts off as a thought.
Yeah.
And if you take it then even further beyond that, we're collective thought and energy. And so out there, other people are also experiencing and thinking the same or similar thing. One of my favorite quotes is that, when the airplane was first starting to be evolved and created, it was that the energy around creating airplanes, we wanted airplanes to be created as a society, as a human evolvement. And so how many people were in the process of creating airplanes, and then who's actually now known for creating airplanes? So it's the same thing. I mean, I don't know how many times over the course of time that you guys have discovered for yourself, but I would have a thought about, I should totally create that, like have this amazing thought. And then 6 months later or a year later, I'm like, there it is. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
So things want to be created, and we have an inspiration and a thought. Do we act on that thought, or do we just say, oh, someday I'll get to it, or whatever? It's like, no. If you have a thought, act on it.
You need to be the one that
You need
brings
to act
that.
on it. And if you don't act on it, thought is going to go somewhere else, because whatever that thought was, it wants to be expressed and created.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of energy and thought, so where do you feel like thought comes from? We tend to, I think, experience thought, quote unquote, in our heads, right? You hear that as a common explanation is, I was thinking that in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Where exactly does a thought come from? If you've experienced any kind of meditative or contemplative practice, you start to observe that thoughts are, these immaterial phenomena that just kind of almost come in and out of existence and in and out of consciousness on a regular basis with really no end. There's really no cessation altogether of thought. Or at least that's been my experience, and then in studying meditation, that's oftentimes the teaching is, your objective, in a sense, if you are practicing that sort of meditative practice, is not to stop your thoughts, because that's just adding more thoughts. But the practice is essentially to pay attention to your thoughts and allow the thoughts to come and go, and realize that you're not doing your thoughts. Your thoughts are just existing in your consciousness.
It's actually comical to sit there and observe your thoughts.
Yeah, it's hilarious, yeah.
We were talking about Sam Harris the other day, and watching his video, and he talks about just that. It's like, I walk out on the stage, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, good, there's water there. They got water for me. Well, no one else needed to know that information.
It's obvious.
It's like, but why am I thinking?
There.
Obviously, the water's there. Like, who is communicating?
Who is communicating this to me, or who am I communicating it to, or who am I?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And so where do thoughts come from? Is like, it's something really to really contemplate and think about, is where are thoughts coming from, if they are actually coming from outside of our source in a collective energy, and they're being and how many other people are actually having the same thought? I mean, how many times do you end each other's sentences, or you say things at the exact same time? Or you're thinking about someone and suddenly they call, or the phone rings, or you're actually getting ready to text somebody and then they send you a text or whatever. Like, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So where is that thought and that energy coming from?
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
I love the creative power of the thought. I like to think that this cup and this table everything that you see here, the clothing that we're wearing, it was a thought in someone's mind.
Yeah.
That vehicle we drove to get here is a thought.
Yeah.
And then it becomes realized. And that's the materialization of it.
Hey, that's a line from Devil Wears Prada.
Is it?
Use that, yeah.
What is it?
You have no idea the time and energy spent behind that green scarf.
There
you
you
remember
go.
that line?
I don't.
When she scoffs at she snarls at like they all look like they're the same color blue, but they're just different shades of blue, and how much thought and energy actually goes into
That's beautiful.
each one. I mean, that's exactly.
I love it. It's exactly right.
And there are.
We should have just played that movie today. That would have been great. So then this energy of the soul, does it come from the body, the mind, or the spirit?
At least for me, I feel like, the mind-body phenomenon, and the attempt to say, this is my body wants that. My body wants food.
Yeah.
We say my body wants sleep.
Yeah.
And we refer to our bodies as almost distinct entities from ourselves. And it's such a weird thing to actually contemplate, like, why do I refer to my body in like the third person?
Are you your body? Are you your mind?
And I've heard all these questions, and I don't feel like the more I've contemplated it, the more I have felt as though there's really no distinction, really. I don't know if my spirit or my essence, how would myself be able to express myself without this vehicle that I refer to distinctly as my body? Because what am I and who am I?
Yeah.
And that's the big I question. Yeah. Is I a concept that I have formulated through all the feedback that I've received with my name, Justin? Every time someone has talked to me and began the sentence with Justin and then said, you are this. My parents, Justin, you are this. Or people say, you are very deep. So then I identify with that and I say, oh, I'm really deep. But then I'm this material, I'm an organism. And, my favorite explanation for this is Alan Watts. And he says, a lot of times we refer to organisms and environments independently from one another. So we say, oh, well, here's this organism and here's this environment. But there's no such thing, because there is no such thing as an organism without an environment. And so he prefers to call or to refer to it as an organism environment.
That's good.
And he says, I'd rather awkwardly refer to it as an organism environment, because there's no such thing as an organism independent of an environment.
So this energy, this transfer of energy can occur between two people. It can be a handshake, a good vibe. It can be sexual energy. It can be negative energy, where I have a strong dislike for the behavior of someone, and why do I like that? And there's this negativity. It can be you're walking down the alley and maybe you feel unsafe. Maybe there's something there that alerts you. I've heard people say that of the five senses, the most important is our sixth sense, which is the perception of energy. Jesse, how do you feel energy in your practice, what you do, day-to-day business?
First off, I notice right away, I don't see, like a lot of people talk about seeing auras or color or anything like that with people. I don't notice that. I notice the brightness in someone's eyes or their face, and the color, like, not like aura color, but the color of their skin tone and how bright it is or how dark it is. I notice energy that way. Like, I'll notice, for instance, when I'm finished working on a patient and they come out of a session, sometimes they can look 10 years younger. They can look more alive. They can look like they're actually thinner than they were before they came into their session. I've even had women get up off the table, look in the mirror, and come out and say, I actually look thinner.
Wow.
And so why is that? It's simply because you've shed off old energy and you've let old energy flow out of you, and now you have somewhat of a sense of emptiness. And it's the kind of this emptiness oftentimes that we actually seek and want, because it's a lightness.
Yeah.
Energy is very light. It's not something that's heavy.
And this brings me back to the body, right? And Jesse's done body work on me, and I've experienced exactly what Jesse's talking about right now. In psychotherapy, we go to psychotherapy and we want to talk through and get at the blockages psychologically that are inhibiting us from experiencing a sense of ease or a sense of fulfillment, contentment, joy, whatever you want to refer to it as. And it wasn't until I actually worked with Jesse that I realized, holy crap, I have different experiential traumas that are in my body, and it required different manipulations of pressure points and meridians and stuff like that, where in one session I was crying on Jesse's shoulder at the end of the session, and it was just because he released some sort of pent up energy that was in my hips. And he looked at me at the end of the session and he was like, what did you say to me? You said, like, you look radiant or something like that.
Oh, you look childlike.
Like childlike.
Wow.
Like,
Playful.
it literally, because I remember in the session.
Like that childlike joy and energy had come back into you.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
like I'd been going to job interviews and it felt so pretentious, and I felt like I was just I was wanting to just tell people what they wanted to hear so that I can feel, and I was just wanting to express the essence of who I was, which really is this vibrant, childlike being. And I felt like as I became an adult and took on adult responsibilities and had a family to provide for, that I suddenly had this inner conflict that was inhibiting that childlike person that I feel like I am. And it came through me after that session. It didn't require for us to have an in-depth conversation or for me to have some sort of intellectual revelation, but it was literally just shift in energy in my body. And there's Chinese medicine and there's different understandings of the human body that refer to the subtle energies that are at play in our bodies and through our bodies. But in Western society, we're a very intellectual society. We have scientific reductionism that reduces the human being to a set of organs and chemicals. And that's how we treat human beings when we're trying to work with energy. Is we say, oh well, we're just a chemistry experiment. So just take this chemical and it'll interact with that chemical and it'll produce this reaction. But it's pretty fascinating what you can do with different understandings of the human body. And Jesse's an expert at it.
Even to that scientific analogy or discussion, even the things that we call material, it's based on a collection of things that have molecules, and the molecules break down to the atoms, and the atoms break down to the subatomic particles. And when scientists study this, there are flashes of energy that may or may not appear depending if the observer is observing them.
Yeah, that's the quantum
Everything
theory.
at the quantum level, everything is moving flashes of energy. If you were to be infinitesimally small and be inside of this solid wood, you would see there is nothing solid at all going on. It's things moving at the speed of light. And that's amazing.
A really cool analogy that it just popped in my head while you were describing that is those images of cities, of big cities at night with the flashes of vehicles that are driving and from like an aerial bird's eye view, it looks like it's just one stream of light.
Yeah.
And if you get closer to it, there's all these like particles of activity that are taking place that we experience as our individual selves,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know how accurate it is or how analogous it is, but it instantly popped in my head as like what that could be it.
And what popped in my head is like the miraculous and how much we take for granted the human body.
Yeah.
The human body is the most amazing. I mean, the longer I work with it and on it, I'm constantly amazed at the miraculous of the design of the human body and how we really are truly designed to heal our bodies. It doesn't matter how old you are. It's like given the right tools and the right situation and the right modalities, you can heal your body working with that, what we already have inside of us to heal our bodies. And so when you start breaking that down in our body and noticing where energy has been disconnected over time and start to reconnect that energy flow in your body, it's like taking a frayed jumper cable and taping it up and fixing it so you have that constant flow of energy now flowing through it. It's like you connect the points of the body. And then also getting back to the point of origin again. Even inside the body, like I've worked on so many people where they go back to, even recently, one of the most interesting was a gentleman who's 31, and after a series of sessions, we were working on, he's got major ankle problems, knee problems, hip problems, all on the right side of his body. And as we were working on a particular point up in his hip area, he remembered being 6 years old and pretending that he was Superman, thinking that he was Superman, and jumping off the top of the playground constantly. And in that moment of doing that, it took him, that was the point of origin for the deconstruction of that whole line of energy in that right side of his body that caused the broken ankle later, that caused the knee problems, that caused the hip issue. So then when you can start to unravel that energy again, just like we've talked about before, is then the healing process can begin, because you've like now found the puzzle piece, and you can put the puzzle back together. And then you're also, I think a lot of it is, I call it playing detective.
Yeah.
Because it is hard to see energy and know what energy is sometimes, and to get back to that point. So playing with some different things. And so when I'm doing a lot of the work I do on bodies, I do call it playing detective. Like, we're going to play detective on your entire body so we can find all those points of origin where the energy is at a loss. Like one thing I notice is that our minds typically only notice the greatest point of pain in our body. That's how we're naturally designed. And so if somebody comes in with a lot of pain, and this goes across any area of your life, if you're noticing, usually first off, we don't notice that we're feeling really good. We only notice when we're feeling really bad. Like, why do we think that? Why aren't we spending more time thinking about and being grateful for, wow, I woke up this morning, I got a great night's sleep, today's going to be an amazing day, my body feels good, I have, there's freedom in my neck and shoulders, my arms are moving, I have both of my feet, all my toes are wiggling. Like, we don't think about that. We think about, oh my God, my low back hurts so bad right now. And that's what we're thinking about all the time. And so as we're going through the body and healing the body, for instance, and we're moving that energy around, your mind naturally then is going to go back to the next point of pain in your body. And so it's almost like people have the experience of, oh, now it's moved over here. Well, it hasn't moved over there. You just didn't notice that part of your body. You weren't even connected to that part of your body because this part of your body had so much pain. So imagine being able to connect all that energy back in your body so your body is in natural harmony. So you're working and performing, and now what happens is you have an abundance of energy to do all the things in life that you want to do, that you're passionate about. And so finding ways to be able to connect with your own energy, open up your energy, heal your energy, expand your energy, be aware of your energy, notice your energy, is one of the most beneficial things I think that we can do in life, because it really does set us up for bliss It sets us up to have a healthy lifestyle. It sets us up to have an awareness. It sets us up for, oh, when I eat these foods, it does not feel good in my body. Well, stop eating those foods. There's a reason why your body is reacting this way.
Yeah. I know for myself, when I've had a long, extended period of output of whether it was work or being involved in some sort of a filming project where maybe it was a long corporate event where I had to film for 14 to 16 hours a day and I'm wiped out. I'll come, maybe I didn't have to film, maybe I filmed Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 14-hour days. Sunday comes, energy levels low. And I just need to sit in a dark room, not do anything. And I can physically feel like my iPhone battery in my body, inch by inch, slowly charging back up. I can feel that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and that's what we talked about at the beginning of the show, like being able to measure energy. It's like you can start to even begin to measure your own energy and notice where we put things into our surroundings to decrease our energy. For instance, like an example of that is by putting people in our surroundings that would have us feel like we are not good enough or we are less than. And so we constantly have that reminder of that. And so that squashes our energy. You remove those people from our surroundings and what happens to our energy? It naturally starts to fill back up. And so it's becoming more and more aware of those kinds of things. And then also just literally, you know, like taking time to get enough sleep is so important. I mean, it's amazing how lack of sleep, when I get lack of sleep, how the next day I feel bloated, I feel lethargic, I feel like heavy. I literally feel 10 to 20 pounds heavier when I have less sleep than when I get plenty of sleep. That's one of the biggest things I've noticed recently is just that little simple thing is like getting the right amount of sleep, I wake up feeling great and light and energized in my body, rejuvenated, versus if I only get 4 or 5 hours of sleep and I wake up the next day and I'm like lethargic and I feel bloated and fat. I'm like, oh, I'm just moving so slow. Depleted energy.
I have kids that are in their late teens, early 20s, and they can sleep in. If they were a draft pick for the first round of sleepers, I would definitely choose my kids for that.
So we started off talking about how thoughts affect our energy. And so Jesse told a story about how he was walking his dog and he realized, oh, I was feeling fine. I had this negative thought about a relationship that I just got out of. And then I noticed the tension that created in my body. And then I thought to myself, oh, well, if that thought created that, let me try and think something positive. How would that affect me? There's a flip side to that. And there's a happiness phenomenon that's taking place in our culture right now where people are obsessed with feeling almost like an addiction with once they get a taste of the bliss that you're referring to and the harmony that you're referring to, that they can never have enough of it. And so there's a phenomenon that's taking place where people are overly emphasizing the positive and missing out on a richness or a depth to life that that comes with touching the darkness and touching what is there that's not comfortable. So as you're telling that story, it's such an easy sell to tell a kid, hey, would you like a sugar rush for this bliss, right? Have a candy bar or have a stick of broccoli, right? The kid's always going to choose a candy bar, but the broccoli has more nutrients, right? And I think that in some ways there is an analogy that can be made that a lot of the pent up energy that we have that is negative is actually a result of resisting actually really feeling it, because we're so afraid of feeling through those negative feelings or what we identify as negative.
And what's interesting is when we let go of that, and I call it surrender, as we surrender into that whatever we are resisting, on the other side of that, what's possible is that bliss, is that you be and experience being vulnerable and you surrender to whatever you're resisting to, and then you do have this experience of lightness and bliss and happiness. And Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
part
like a
of-
sense of peace about it.
Yeah, like part of the magic in the body work that I was referring to earlier was that it was incredibly painful. And each time I felt the pain, I really went into the session with the intention of healing and moving through the blockages that I was experiencing in my life. And every time I felt the pain, I mean, there was part of me that wanted to be like, I want it to stop. Like, I don't want you to stretch that any further. Or I don't want you to push into that pressure point any further. And then I actually utilized a meditative practice during our session where I was just like, okay, the pain is there, and I relaxed into it, and suddenly, like Jesse said, on the other side of it, that's where the bliss was found. That's where the release was.
Yeah, it's called surrender.
Yeah,
Surrender.
and so I wanted to provide contrast because I think a lot of people get really stuck into, I need to push away negative, so I need to take all the people in my life that challenge me, that help me grow, and instead I'm going to push them away.
That's
because
great.
and when really everybody that's coming into our life is helping, who's challenging us is providing opportunities for us to grow too. So,
And we've energetically invited them into our lives
For
to
that
challenge
purpose.
us to
Yes.
grow.
Yes.
We can be responsible
Yes.
for that we have done
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Now we're at the part of the show where we like to offer a turning stone, and with today's turning stone, we turn to Jesse.
that. The question to practice this week is, what does your soul desire to experience in this moment, and in this moment, and in this moment, that would have it be fulfilled? So this week's practice is to notice all the places in your life, or to notice a few places in your life where you are resisting. What are you resisting? Why are you resisting it? And sometimes it doesn't even matter why or what or when you're resisting it. Just notice that you're resisting it. How do you feel inside you when you're resisting it? And so then put into practice, or a couple times give it a shot. What would it feel like to actually surrender into the resistance, to move to the other side of the resistance? And then we want to hear back from you. What do you notice? What are you experiencing on the other side of that surrender that we talk about? Is it bliss? Is it passion? Does something new show up? Do you have new creativity, new creation that forms out of that? So we want to hear back from you on that. And remember, this is a show about questions and questioning. It is not a show about answers. Nothing we say is the truth, and it is up to each of us to discover our own truth.
Join us each week on The Turning Stone Show as we continue our journey of conversations.
Subscribe and get in touch with us. Stay connected and join in the conversation.